spring is here, nature's getting active again. The little birdies are building their nests and all sorts of business, and I've been spending a bit of time photographing them. So when I first started trying to photograph little birds, I'll be honest, I found them really tricky, and if I'm even more honest, I still do. It's just that they're so small, and trying to get them big in frame can be quite a challenge. But I've had some shots that I've been pretty happy with. So yeah, I'm going to run through a few of the things that I've done that sort of helped me achieve those shots and took me from getting these tiny little birds in the frame to getting some closer shots. In spring now, which is great. Good time to be shooting stuff because it's very active. When I'm looking for little birds to photograph, there's obviously a few things I'm taking into consideration. If I'm just out for a bit of a walk and I've got a couple of hours, I'll try and get somewhere with as many habitats as I can, particularly somewhere near water, because everything needs water. If you can get somewhere with water, with mixed land, like where I am now, we've got woods, we've got heathland, we've got low bushes, a bit of everything really, then you're just sort of multiplying the chances. The other way of doing it is sort of singling out a species and just going somewhere that is, you know, most likely to have them there. So for example, I went on the moors for meadow pipits because they like to heather up there, and then up onto actually this location for stone chats, because there's all the sort of heathland with the low scrubby bushes that they like to sit on top of. And oftentimes if you go out looking for one species, you'll tend to find another, or a few more anyway. So obviously best time of day to photograph these small birds is going to be early in the morning, late in the afternoon, but as with many people, I'm sure, I find I have quite a lot of constraints on my time. I'm a dad, I've got 2 kids, hence the wild father, eh? And yeah, they take up a lot of time. I'm usually sorting out breakfast, doing school runs, and yeah, it means that I can't always get out at them times, or not for as long as I'd like to. So I try and squeeze in mornings where I can, but sometimes I just make do with the midday sun. It's been really sunny last week or so. And so what that does allow you to do is get some action shots. I got some action shots that previously I couldn't get on tree creepers because I couldn't have a fast enough shutter speed. So you can kind of play with your environment and just make use of it. Also, I always find if it's a really sunny day and you head to a woodland and you shoot the birds in the shade with the sunlight in the background, that can give you some really nice shots. So yeah, I try not to let my own constraints on my life put me off going out, and just try and make do with what I have. As with all wildlife photography, you're going to be far better placed if you've done a lot of research on what you want to get or where you're going, so what you can expect to see, and then you know that you can be looking in the right areas. I know when I first started, I'd go out looking for things and I'd sit myself down places and there was just nothing there, and it was because I hadn't done my research properly or hadn't spent long enough there to see where things actually were. So it's like here it can be dead in some places, even though it feels like there should be loads of stuff there, and yeah, and then suddenly you stumble across another patch and there's loads of things there. So it's yeah, it's about time spent out just having a look, and just a bit of research. The more information the better, as I seem to keep saying. There wasn't anything there, just wanted to look good. because a bird is at a location doesn't necessarily mean it's a good location to photograph them at. So I spent ages trying to photograph long-tailed tits and all sorts in this one location, but they were always so high, which was no good. So, and similar to where I am now, there's chiff-chaffs around everywhere, but they're always sitting in the top of the trees, and there's only one spot I know here where they actually come down and sit in the gorse bushes. So obviously knowing your locations and where you're likely to find them is going to help you out, and just don't stick yourself somewhere where they are but where they're not going to be photographable. So I'm using the Sigma 150-600 lens, which, as I've said before, its widest aperture is only 6.3, so it is a bit of a light sucker. What I tend to find is I'm often, if I'm in the woods or whatever, I have to bump the ISO right up. So the sort of tip that I've always heard and tried to stick to is, if you're going to put your ISO up, make sure you get your exposure spot on. Most of the noise is going to be in the dark areas of the image, so if you can expose to the right or get a good exposure, you're going to remove a lot of that noise. So when you come to process it, you're going to have less issues with a grainy looking image and trying to sort that out. So small birds, one of the things I struggled with most when I first started trying to photograph small birds, which I think a lot of people do, was getting close to them. Even with a 600mm lens, you still have to be very close to get a frame filling picture with a small bird. So perches are obviously, a lot of people use perches. I've got nothing against perches, I don't use them myself because I don't have time really to regularly go and feed a spot and set it up. And I prefer going to places and seeing birds in their environment and sort of just not having too much of an impact on their behaviour and sort of watch them naturally. But you get some amazing shots if you set up perches, but it's just not something I've got the time to do really. What I tend to do if I'm somewhere where I think there's birds is I just walk very, very slowly, very quietly, and try not to make any sudden movements because that will scare them away. And then if I hear any, I will stop and just have a look around, see if I can spot where it is, and just edge closer very, very slowly. Now, I know this sounds a bit silly, but I try and imitate the environment that I'm in. For example, if it's a windy day, I'll sort of walk a bit as if I'm being blown around, which looks stupid if anyone sees you, but it's that idea of trying to fit in with the environment and not look out of place and not do anything that's unexpected. And yeah, I mean, it gets me pretty close a lot of the time. Another thing is just if you're in a territory and you've watched them from a distance for a while and you know roughly where they go, wait until they've gone to one end of their territory, plonk yourself somewhere well hidden and just wait for them to come back. And again, I've got some quite close shots with that. But there's nothing wrong with environmental shots as well, like a bit of a wider field of view. It tells a little bit more of a story about the bird and where it lives and what have you. In terms of shutter speed and aperture, I'll probably always prioritise a little bit of a faster shutter speed over a lower ISO, just because when you're dealing with small birds, they're hard enough anyway, they flit around quite a bit and you just guarantee yourself a few more shots. Having said that, I'll quite happily shoot down to 320th of a second on my 600mm and just try and be stable as you do it. I don't normally use tripods because I like the flexibility. Sometimes I'll use a tripod if I know that something's going to be somewhere. So yeah, it's all a bit of trial and error really. So another good thing about being out and about shooting small birds is that you get surprises. I was out the other week down my local woodlands trying to shoot some small birds, photograph small birds, and yeah, I found this heron, so I crept up slowly and managed to get a few shots, and then the snow shower started, so I got these shots of this heron in the snow, which are something I didn't expect really. So there's always those bonuses as well. When I was here trying to photograph chiffchaffs, I actually came across a long-tailed titnest. I didn't get any photographs of it because I didn't want to approach the nest because they were busy in there. And you know, this is quite a point really at this time of year. So in my last video I found a tree creeper's nest and I managed to get a bit of film footage of it. Now that was shot over a few days and I spent a long time making sure that I wasn't interfering at all. And I think ethics of wildlife is probably a separate video that I will do because it's so important you don't disturb them. This long-tailed tit, it was nesting right by the path, and every time someone walked past it was flying off from the nest and leaving it. So whether it will survive or not is a, you know, we just have to wait and see. But I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me. There wasn't enough cover for me to go unnoticed, so I just I left it. It would have been great photographically, but my photographs, they're not as important. You know, nature has to come first, and that is the point. With the tree creeper, for a start, I'd spent a lot of time there, and this tree creeper would, even when I was just sitting having a cup of tea, it would come and sit, sort of start climbing up the trees next to me. So it wasn't very scared of me. Even though that was the case, I still made sure when I was shooting the nest, I went in a way where I had complete coverage from the nest, no direct line of sight, and I was in camouflage. So also there's things you can employ, like I used a teleconverter, shooting on APS-C, so you get that extra reach, and it just means you can be so far away from it, hidden in camouflage, so you're not creating any disturbance at all. And that is, you know, paramount. I can't say that point enough really. Our photographs and our video are not that important. So if there's ever any doubt that you're creating a disturbance to a nest or even just a bird as you're approaching it, you just have to back off. Even, you know, there's no, I never chase a bird either. I'll never chase a bird to try and get a shot of it. I'll sit down and let the birds come to me. You know, I'll get so close, and then it's time to sit down and let the birds come to you if they feel comfortable. And you know, if you're sat down for 20 minutes, then usually they see that you're not a threat, and they'll quite happily come and perch beside you. You know, keep those movements minimal, and you'll be surprised at how comfortable they get with your presence. So yeah, it's really important to bear the wildlife in mind. So there we go, that's just a little bit on how I shoot small birds. You know, these techniques brought me a few good shots, but you might know some far better ways of doing it. If you do, just let me know in the comments below, and happy shooting!